Hugh, thank you.
Hugh, thank you.
Can you comment on your family background?
Well, I was born in the Bronx to a family of three sisters, myself, my parents. My childhood was a little bit rough. My father was a little bit out of control at times. There was some physical violence in the home. And then there would be some love on the home, so there's a lot of confusion in terms of, my being wanted or not wanted. I grew up in that environment, and that was perpetrated on all my family, my sisters, and at times my mother. I came from not a very religious background, Jewish in the tradition. Went to school and kind of found a way to deal with all of the chaos and confusion in my home that allowed me to, at least survive on a physical level. On a spiritual level, there was no concept of anything other than what was happening to me physically in the world, growing up. And that was pretty much the case, through my teenage years and even into my adulthood. I moved around a lot. I lived in a lot of places. Lived in the Bronx, lived in Long Island, lived in Queens, lived in Dallas, Texas. So I got to experience a lot of different upheavals in my life and conditions that were, that caused me to struggle on a lot of different levels I wasn't even aware of at the time. So it was troubled. It was a difficult time in my life, growing up.
Can you speak on your musical background, education, or training?
Sure. I didn't come from a musical family in the sense that I had people in my family that played instruments, but my parents were both very musical in the sense of there was always music in the home. They were more into, at the time, they come from the 30s and the 40s and maybe even some of the 50s. So, they were, Frank Sinatra, Judy Garland. I heard a lot of that music. There wasn't really jazz per se. I never really heard jazz till much later on. When I was about 13, I had a cousin, an older cousin that's 5 years older than me that played the drums. And I was fascinated by the fact that he played drums. And there was something about that instrument that drew me in. And I wanted to become a drummer. I felt the need to play drums. And my father had bought me a snare drum when I was 13 years old. And but at some point, I can't speak to the reasons why my father would have his bouts, but at some point he came into my room, he broke the drum. I don't know if he threw it out the window. That's how I think of it, but it was gone. I was physically punished for something that I still don't know. Those times I didn't know what I was being physically punished for. So the drum musical inspiration that I had was kind of buried. I was back in those days in my teenage years. I got pretty heavy into rock and roll. I was a rock and roll guy. 1956, Elvis Presley. How old was I? I was born in 47, so I was 56. Was that 9 years old? 9 years old. I used to cut my hair off and Scotch tape it so I'd have sideburns. And I got very much into rock and roll, and then when the 60s came, I got very much into the English bands, not the Beatles. I was more into the grittier. Well, at that time, to me, what was grittier, the Rolling Stones, the Yardbirds, Cream. I became a very big Cream fan. Ginger Baker was my hero drummer. And I met my first wife when I was 1967. I was 20 years old. I didn't marry her at that time, but I met her. And we wound up getting married, and she knew of my desire to be a musician, to be a drummer. And I was working at the time for First National City Bank on Wall Street. And I came home, we were married, and there was a set of drums in my living room. And she said, "You're always talking about being a drummer, put your mouth where put your, whatever the expression is, and get yourself a Village Voice," because in Manhattan, Village Voice was the paper that you did everything with. And I looked up for drum instructors, and I found Bob Moses, who I had no idea who he was. And he was giving drum lessons, and I called him up, and he invited me over. And I remember going to his loft on 3rd Street, and we were talking about kind of what we're talking about now, what your musical influences, what's going on. And he asked me if I ever heard of Max Roach, Art Blakey, Elvin Jones, and I said, "I don't even know who you're talking about." And he put on a Max record. And at that moment, my mind kind of exploded, and I was open to a whole other level of musicality and understanding of the different levels of playing and expressing oneself musically. Just it kind of happened on the spot. And from that point on, I became very much a jazz aficionado. And I was kind of leaving my rock background, and with the influence of rock alum Bob Moses. At that time, he became a member of a band, Compost, with Jack DeJohnette, Harold Vick, a really wonderful tenor player, Juma Santos, and rock alum Bob Moses, and a bass player, Jack Gregg, who I became very close with. And I started to hang out with these people, and I started to gain a different understanding of the music and a different level of approaching the music. And the way that they played and their approach was something that I wanted to take upon myself. So I studied with rock alum, and I got into some bands, kind of more rock bands than jazz bands. I wasn't really ready to play jazz, but so I became kind of like a rock drummer, and then I got into kind of a jam band type thing where it was looser, and in 1979 I had an opportunity to go on the road with Jack DeJohnette. I didn't become the road manager in the sense of setting up, the gigs and stuff like that. I was setting up the equipment. And we were traveling by van and plane. We would fly somewhere. I would go rent the van, bring the equipment over to the gigs. And I had the opportunity to play drums when Jack played either melodica, because he played melodica, and also played piano. So had the opportunity to sit in sometimes on the drums with Jack and his band. And in the hotel room at night, he would give me some lessons. We would talk. And so I got close to Jack at the time. And it was a very exciting part in terms of my musical career. But back at that time, I was also involved in some dark moments, particular including chemical dependency, abuse, selling. I was into that scene also, and actually, in the middle of the tour, we were doing a United States tour. We came back from the West Coast, and we were going to do the East Coast, but in that period I had gotten arrested. And I got arrested for, conspiracy to distribute drugs. And I got involved in court cases, and at that point I felt it was more beneficial for me to be living a life of more of a quote-unquote straight type existence. I got a job. I was no longer married to my son's mother. I married the woman that I was living with, but ultimately kind of drifted away from the playing of the music. And from that point on, I never really got back into the playing mode. I subsequently, but I guess that's kind of like my musical, how I got into music and how kind of I drifted away from the actual participation of the actual playing. But the music was always in my heart. I was very close to rock alum Bob Moses. I was still close to some of the musicians I met, and I still had that's a very strong connection with that, and that's never left me. So I guess that's kind of my musical background. I never had formal training. I took lessons with a few people, but.
Can you comment on your jazz experience and why jazz?
Well, like I say, when I went to study with Rock Alam, he exposed me to the bebop drummers, the drummers of that time, that were really strong. I mean, they really opened my mind. Like I say, my level of understanding music was really very basic in terms of rock and roll, and I'm not putting that down. I don't judge that. But it just opened me up to another way of experiencing a music more on a level that wasn't just a physical wanting to play music. It became more of a total experience for me with jazz. It opened me up musically, and when I and not only did I start to hear other music and musicians, I got to meet people. Harold Vick was a very big influence in my life. He was a tenor player, played flute. He unfortunately died at a young age. He was 38. He had a heart attack. But he would invite me over to his apartment. I lived in Manhattan. He lived on Central Park West, and we would talk. And because of my childhood, I always felt kind of not part of anything, and it was difficult for me to feel accepted. But Harold had this presence of accepting, and he really had a spiritual presence about him, Harold Vick, and I felt that very strongly. And so through meeting the musicians, through hearing the music, and experiencing, going to gigs, I was going to recording sessions with Rock Alam, I was meeting people, it just opened me up to a whole nother vision in terms of where the music could go. It was open-ended for me. And that experience was really very, very strong, and something I wanted to continue to get deeper into. And even in my playing, I did do some jazz gigs with some of my friends. We did do some things. It was never on a level of where I could go out and do concerts, but I did get into that and try to bring myself to that level of musicianship. Understanding that level of musicianship was very important, and devotion, that there was a devotion to the music at the time. Not getting into personalities, I didn't know the personalities, so I'm not, but just in terms of the musicality and the musicianship, I was around some very, very, kind of impeccable type people and experiences in terms of the music. So that's kind of like.
How did you come to know and meet Bapu?
My first knowledge of Bapu was through Rock Alam again. Rock Alam was living in Boston. At this point, I was living in New Jersey, married to my third wife. At the time, I had, I think, 5 children. And Rock Alam would call me, and see, I never knew that Rock Alam had a musical history with Bapu before he was into the spiritual aspect. So I guess when he started to get into the spiritual thing, his excitement and his enthusiasm, he would call me and say, "Man, you got to read this stuff that Tisziji Muñoz is writing. It's just incredible stuff." And he would read me paragraphs or lines over the phone. And although I didn't understand necessarily exactly the words that were being spoken, there was a sense of there was something happening here that I needed to get closer to, and I asked Rock Alam to send me some books, and I think Rock Alam sent me a book, and I would read and not quite understand, everything that was being spoken, but as I later learned, the understanding of the word was not really the message per se. It was the feeling and the experience I was having on an emotional and spiritual level that I didn't even understand at the time, but it had such an impact on me. And then my first hearing the music of Bapuji was at a club in Manhattan, the Iridium. Rock Alarm called me. He had a gig in Manhattan, with Bapu. He wanted me to come down and hear the music. And I said, of course, I'll be there. And I brought members of my family, another close friend. And when I saw Bapu on the stage, Bapu has a presence. Just Bapu's presence is very impactful. There's an impact for me that just his presence, brings to me. And when the band started to play, when Bapu played his first note, and I mentioned this, a couple of times in my talkings with Bapu, and that first note split me open, and not violently, lovingly. It was an experience of total. I felt a compassion and a sense of well-being, and a sense of being elsewhere other than in a seat at a table in a club in Manhattan. I was no longer there. I was in a place of, that was, at the time I couldn't put into words, but I just know, and I knew at the time that that's where I needed to be, in that note. I had to be in that note. And I'm still in that note. with all the other notes I've heard and all the music, that one note, it opened me up to a vision, that I had of that there was another experience, there was another dimension for me to be, that I could become part of, and that I could become part of that I was part of that, and that was my first musical experience with Bapuji. Was that moment, and then every other opportunity I had to either get a CD or go to a concert or a gig, and Tisziji plays, doesn't play that often, so it wasn't that often I was able to go. But every time he played, there was gigs with Pharaoh, there were Rashid Ali, Paul Schaefer, any place that there was a gig happening, I showed up, and so that was my first experience with Bapu.
Do you see Bapu as an ordinary person with extraordinary responsibilities, or as an extraordinary person with ordinary responsibilities?
Well, it depends what you mean by ordinary. Extraordinary, of course. I mean, even Bapu as a person is almost not a description, because I really feel that Bapu's personage is a spirit that's in a body, and is constantly being demonstrated. The demonstration of that, I think, is what allows me to feel what I feel when I'm in his presence, even when I'm not in his presence. So, extraordinary, of course. I mean, Bapu's responsibilities, I think, are the responsibilities that has come upon him. I don't think they're responsibilities that he took on himself. I think they're responsibilities that he came to realize were responsibilities that come from a place other than self-want or determination. I know a little bit about Bapu's past. The spiritual family he was brought into. Members of his family that were spiritualists, mediums, and I know from a very early age that he was told that he was a very special person and had something to give and to offer, the world. So in terms of extraordinary with ordinary responsibilities, I couldn't call his responsibilities ordinary. I would call them the responsibilities that I think that we all have in relationship to what we have to give to the world. Because I think that our responsibilities as peoples and as spirits is to uplift and to be able to understand that and be in agreement with that and have that as an intuition and just to do what we have to do to get to that point, as Bapu has always done what he had to do to reach that point. to be able to just, be able to have that heart space available to other beings. And I think that if you want to use the word responsibility, I would say that's Bapu's primary responsibility, is to bring that heart space to demonstrate the reality of that, the dimension of that dimension is not something that is not available to all of us. And when the first time I came here, in fact at the Iridium gig, Tisziji had told me this, that he recognized I was in need of a fair hearing. He recognized the level of suffering that I was involved in my life, and he told Rakalam if I wished, I could give him a call and come up, and I did. And I think the first words I spoke was, "I'm just happy to be here." And I think the words that Bapu spoke to me was, "You always were here." And at that point, I started to realize, yes, I always have been here, but covered in so much suffering and karma and struggle, I was just never able to, reach that point of sensitivity. I couldn't sensitize myself to that level, but coming here and starting to become open to that has allowed me to, at least at times, have that sensitivity be who I am at any given moment.
Have you come to recognize the level of creativity that Bapu works from, and what do you make of it?
Yes, the level of creativity, again, the level is it's beyond level. I don't think level is a word to be used, because then there's a top, there's a top level, there's a bottom level, and with Bapu we're not talking in those terms. We're talking in terms of being beyond all that. His creativity is one of primordial source. I mean, it's being given to him. He's receiving it. He's creating it, coming from a place of non-human possibility. It's an impossible place that Bapu comes from. Bapu refers to it, I believe, as the 0 point, the point of zero. And to understand that, one has to be in that space, in that heart space of the music and the creativity. Because Bapu's creativity is not just the music. Bapu's creativity is the creational source of being, and that's so far beyond the music. I mean, the music is a here and now, on the spot demonstration of the power of realizing and being in other dimensions. But it goes so far beyond that. When Bapu talks about silence and beyond the sound. Because when I hear Bapu with the music, I'm not hearing with my ears anymore. At a certain point, of course I am, but at a certain point, I'm open so much that it's not even my ears. I'm not listening with my ears. I'm listening with my whole being, and I'm part of it. My molecules, my atoms, everything is part of what's going on. So there's no separation any longer. So when I'm at a concert or a gig, there's no longer any stage. There's no longer any seat I'm sitting in. I'm part of whatever's being on. I'm like drawn into it, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like an explosion, it's kind of like a supernova, it's like a star imploding, and the force is being every natural source, every natural thing is being, put out there and available. The beautiful thing is its availability to everybody. If one can be open to that, there's no denying that that's what it is. It's so strong that there's just no denying that the creative force that Bapu puts out is the music and everything beyond. And that's how I experience it. on that level.
Why would you say Bapu is important to you?
Bapu is important to me. Well, number one, I think the name Bapu, as I understand it, I believe means father. And the feeling I have in Bapu's presence is one of fatherhood. In fact, if I had a favorite tune, I don't like to put it in such material words, but Bapu has a meditation, fatherhood. And from the first time I heard that, again from the first note, that's like my mantra, and that's that feeling of being safe, of knowing that the presence that I am in contact with is one of truth and one of beauty and goodness and light and love and compassion, no judgment. All of those things that you hear people say, Bapu demonstrates. Bapu is. I've never had a sense of Bapu, although I felt at times intimidated. I might not want to call because I think what I have to say is, I don't want to burden him or it's not worthy. Bapu's response is, Bapu once told me, that, if you're thirsty, you must drink. And I use that a lot. I use that to myself, that I know that when I need to be in the presence, if I'm going through some things in my quote unquote more material existence, I know where my oasis is. I know where the water is. I know where the mana is. Bapu is like mana to me. He's the source of all my knowledge and all of my sense of that everything is good, that everything is beautiful, that with all this stuff that's going on in the world, and that there's a place that if we can experience that and then be that in our practice, that we can impart that to other people, not necessarily with words or by lectures, or I certainly don't write books, but I know with my family, I know the light that I bring to my family. I know that because I know the darkness and the suffering that my children have been through. I have children that had natural parents die. I have adopted children whose father died at a very young age. They were very young. I have a son that when he was 19, his mother died a tragic death. And I know the suffering that they've been through, and I know the struggles that they've had, but I know I see the light that they live in when they're near me and when they're around me. I can experience that. And I don't say that there's no ego involved in saying that. That's just a sense of being, And so Bapu's importance to me is important. It's breathing. It's breath. Bapu is my breath, and there's nothing more. You cannot live without breath. I can live without food for a day or two, without water. I don't have to go to the bathroom all the time, but I need to have my breath. Bapu is my breath, and allows me to, breathe on a daily basis and be close to that awareness.
Bapu says it was your wife at the Iridium who asked him if he could give you a spiritual name. Bapu told her that her intentions were appreciated, but requests do not create the karma of names except under catastrophic conditions. Do you have any comments on this incident?
Yeah, I didn't know that incident until Bapu told me that happened, because my wife had never told me that. Well, number one, I think my wife, being a beautiful person and of course being human, suffers her own karma and her own attachments to certain things. But I think the fact that she asked Bapu that just shows how he was able to touch her heart. You know what I mean? And through that, her love for me wanted me to become part of whatever he was at that point, because I don't think she had or I had any kind of real concept of that I could put into words or she could put into words. But so I think that experience for her was was so overwhelming and so heartfelt that she wanted that for me so badly, because she knew Rakalam. I think probably at that time she only knew that Rakalam had a name. She wouldn't know anybody else in the circle. So, so that was, but I understood. That it was a name is not given just because you want a name. A name because it's not a name in the sense of like, well, when I was born, my parents gave me a name for them. It was a name that meant something to them. You know what I mean? I believe that by coming around with Bapu and being involved with the heartfelt essence of what was going on, that the name that was given to me by Bapu was the name that I was. You know what I mean? That I think it came from me. I think the name came from me, and that Bapu, realized that, and with that kind of intuitive sense, because Bapu is so, his intuition is of such a high level, is so intense that so the name became very meaningful to me, and at a certain point, even though I do live in a very materialistic world, so to speak, because I work, I have, all the things that I do, when I'm not here, but I did at some point take that name on, even with my other friends in in the other world, maybe I'll say. So people now call me, Salba Goshe. That's my name because that's who I am. It's not a name that means just something that somebody took because they liked it, or there's a depth behind that. There's a meaning behind that. So I'm not just called Salba Goshe. I am Salba Goshe, and that's very important to me.
How has Bapu affected your relationship to your family?
Well, my relationship with my family, I've always been loving, to my family, but I've also had very dark moments, and depressive moments, and I've always had confusion in my relationship with my family because I had confusion in relationship with myself. So of course I was going to be confused with my family. I was confused with every aspect of my life because I had no clarity had no vision of why I was even here. So my experience with Bapu has given me a clarity, a clear recognition of purpose, and a clear recognition of why my relationship to my family in terms of what I can impart to them in terms of the spiritual life, taken out of the depths of depression and anger and self-doubt and being able to impart to them, not so much with words, but by life experience, by my presence, by just becoming open to a spirit that has no connection with fear and anger and depression, and although that's part of my karmic existence, and I understand that, my association with Bapuji has allowed me, I don't even know if allowed me is the right word, but has opened me to be able to experience the inner, to go beyond those karmic tasks or those karmic chains. I'd say those karmic chains, and not to break them, but to melt them. That they've been melted. To be in the presence of Bapu is a melting experience. It's one of deep, heartfelt melting, and experiencing myself not as a physical body any longer, but as being a part of something much more, psychic and much more otherworldly, not worldly, but otherworldly. To be a part of the entire spectrum of the universe, not just my gravitational experience here on Earth, but to be able to be lifted from that and be able to experience, these wonderful moments of clarity and weightlessness, and to have that understanding of my interconnectivity with not just Bapu, but with everything that we're all part of, and that freedom from gravity, I would have to say. The feeling, because when I listen to Bapu's music, I'm no longer in a seat in a venue. You know what I mean? I'm uplifted. I'm no longer listening to the music. I am the music. I'm part of the music. The notes that are being played is me. There's no difference. You know what I mean? So that kind of heartfelt experience is quite something that, as indescribable as it is describable at the same time.
How have Bapu's teachings affected your relationship to your family?
Well, Bapu's teachings certainly have opened me to an awareness of what family is all about, and an understanding that I have to bring light. See, I have to be part of I've been part of darkness for so long in my life. With my upbringing, the violence I've had in my upbringing, if I'm allowed to say, substance abuse, all the things that I've been through, the dark side, I guess I should put it that way, the gravitational pull side, that keeps me tethered to all the things on this earth that are negative. The fact that I'm in practice, because this is all about practice. This whole experience for me is one of practice and studying and allowing myself to allow the beauty and the love that I'm surrounded by to actually experience that, because for so long in my life I couldn't let that in. I couldn't allow love and beauty and gentleness, and maybe I even have to really put my quotes around the word gentle and gentleness, because that's what I experience here. And to be able to bring that to my family, to be able to have them experience that from me, is I think is the greatest gift, that I can give them, because I can't teach them, I can't sit down and teach them this, you know what I mean? But by being this, they can experience it like I experience it. It's not a touching. It's not a physical touching thing. It's not like I touch you and all of a sudden you become enlightened, that type of thing. But it's through a sense, it's through some type of emotional / intellectual / beyond all that sense that everything is right, and that there's a beauty that is here. And I believe that that's what I impart to my family with words. Some of my children are a little more open to the words, but my presence is one of, I know that I impart that, with my presence. And I see the change in my family. I see the change in my wife, with them being around me, and my ability to, not ability is not the right word, but just that where I'm at today and that openness is very real to them.
And how has Bapu's music affected your relationship to your family?
Well, Bapu's music is at the center of my total explosion of self, the total annihilation of who I was, or who I thought I was. The music is the lightning bolt that, just goes, opens up, and then everything that's beautiful inside can spill out. There's no effort. There's no effort when it comes to loving my family and imparting that spiritual sense and realization that I get from Bapu's music. It's effortless because it's so strong. I mean, it just is. There's no defining that. It is what it is, And to put a label on that would be a disservice to the music. But because it's so beyond music, I mean, it's so musical that it's beyond music, and that realization and the way that I express that and experience and I'm able to impart that to my family, and expose them to this has been incalculably positive for my entire family. My family suffered a lot. My two older daughters' father died not a very pleasant death, an overdose. And I'm just being honest now. My son's mother died of an overdose. There's a lot of there's a lot of darkness involved in my family, and there was a lot of healing to be done. And I think if I had to say the greatest experience I've had is a self-healing, but by that experience and those vibrations bringing to my family is what this is about to me. And Bapu has always told me that this is about my family. That's my relationship, here is my family. And then to others, and I'm just grateful that I've had this opportunity to come in contact with a spirit like Bapu.
Bapu, who is a family man and a householder by traditional description with great-grandchildren, lives as an example to all who have similar responsibilities. How has this fact and demonstration helped you to be a better parent, a better student, or a better human being?
Well, just from pure observation and word that I've gotten from Bapu, is to be true to the nature of oneself, and to not have the fear of allowing myself to become open to a level of grace and beauty and goodness, and allow that to kind of to be open to such a point that when I'm with family, that they're able to experience that as I experience that. It's not necessarily, I'm not a teacher, but I'm an experiencer. And through my experience and through the love, through the ability to accept love, that could be a hard concept for a lot of people, to accept love and to understand it, and to accept compassion. And it could be a very difficult, it could be a trial for a lot of people. It certainly was for me, for most of my life. I'm not a young kid anymore, and my exposure to Bapuji was later on in my life, and so the strength, the power of that, becoming aware of that, has only opened me so that can flow through me. And that sense that I get and that feeling that I get is so strong within me that it's just naturally experienced by my family. And it is experienced. My family has become so much more in the light than in the dark, that it's really something that words would not really give it the justice that it deserves.
What do you feel Bapu's purpose or work is in the world?
To bring light, to let people know that that the light and the sound, in Tishiji's words, the sound, the ensoundment, that there's a dimension of existence that goes so far beyond what we experience here on Earth in a gravitational experience, that there is so much more to be experienced on a level of grace, compassion, love, humanity, giving, selflessness. You know, that to me that's what Bapu has brought to me. So by logic, if that word I could use, that's what Bapu brings to all people that feel that are in resonance with Bapu's spirit, because this is definitely a spiritual giving. This is not a physical giving. This is a spiritual giving, and to be open to that and to be able to receive that is the blessing. And I've been blessed to be able to experience it, and not hopefully, I mean, there's no turning back. I mean, once you're here, there's no turning back. You can't go back. Nothing to go back to. It's blown up, it's destroyed, you know, it's gone forever.
How has Bapu's influence helped your music or helped you to be a better person?
Well, I don't play music at this time in my life, but I can, in terms of the musicality that I feel and the understanding of music on a level that is more than just notes on a paper, or you know, maybe an emotional experience I might have because I certainly love music, and I've certainly been moved by music all my life. I mean, I think of myself as a musician. I may not be playing an instrument right now, but my resonance with music is such that you know, I have such a rapport with it, and it runs through me, you know, through my body. But musically, I don't listen to anything else anymore, and that has been a slow dropping away. I've held on to a lot of different musical genres that I still love, and I still, you know, I'm so glad that I have as part of my being. But in terms of listening, because I'm a listener, you have to understand I'm not a player, you know. So I'm coming to this from a listener's, but a listener that I become a player. Maybe the instrument's not in my hand, or I'm not sitting at the drums, but I'm a player when I'm enveloped, because that's the word I could use by the music. I'm enveloped. When I'm enveloped by the sound, I'm as much of a player as anybody else. So that's how it's influenced me, you know, as a musician. Just the understanding that's wordless. I can't put into words the understanding I have of the musical level of where this is at, and what it does for me when I'm in it. I don't even like to use the word listening to it, because it comes a point where I'm not listening anymore. It comes a point where it's through me. The music is coming through me, and in my life, it's just, I mean, that power, that grace, the grace of Bapu's music, the giving, what he's giving. When Bapu plays, it's an offer. It's like, you know, it's at the altar. It's right here for you. This is what I give to you. And then, you know, and how you receive it is dependent upon how open you are to that kind of spiritual sensitivity. And being around it and hearing it and being part of it, having the honor of being part of it, has just made me the person who I'm becoming, because I'm evolving, is just beyond. I couldn't put that into words other than to say that it's about gratitude. It's about a deep, deep gratitude and graciousness.
Is there a difference between what Bapu plays and other people's music?
The difference is that Bapu's music is a music that doesn't come from an educational / egoic / looking for recognition / making a living type experience. The music is pure in the sense of that it's heart, that there's no difference between the music and the heart. So when Tisziji plays, I'm not listening to music so much as I'm experiencing Bapu's heart. And that generosity, that openness, that desire to give that kind of experience to me and to others is the quintessential definition of beauty and brilliance. And to be able to be exposed to that, to be part of that, and to experience it is, I'm very blessed. I'm a very blessed being to have been able to experience this on a level that I never imagined existed.
In your relationship to Bapu, are you becoming better or clearer about yourself and what you're here to do?
I'm much clearer about myself. Better is a relative term, but clearer. I'm much clearer in the purpose of my being here, and understanding that it's not a material purpose, and understanding that it's a purpose to bring heartfelt peace and love within my family, and to be able to bring them to a point, to have them be able to exist in kind of a gravitationless, if that's the right word, if that's a real word, experience that we're not tethered to the chains of karma and to negative life experience. And that, to be able to experience this life in a realm that is not really known about, discussed much, experienced by too many people in this part of the world, and so that to me is like such a revelation and an awakenment, and just to be in the presence of this type of ethereal, if that's the right word, existence, and to have my family part of that, to experience that I bring to them, not necessarily with words, but by my being. Because when they're around me, and I know this, there's an upliftment of what's going on in their lives at the moment. And I hope that's...
Is there anything special that Bapu has asked you to do?
Bring light to my family, bring light to myself, and then bring light to my family. And then through that, bring light to everyone else and the rest of the world. Just to bring light. I mean, there is nothing else to do. What else is there to do? I mean, other than to bring light. Everything else pales, besides that. So I'm here to bring light to my family. And to myself, of course, because I have to practice. It's the practice. And then to impart that to my family and to people that I love.
Do you recognize your practice as part of an individual path?
I recognize my practice as part of an individual path in relationship to the path of, and I don't want to sound corny, my fellow travelers on the path with me. it's very individual in the sense that I think it starts off individual, but I think as I grow and as I'm growing and as I've grew, the openness, it's one of those, individual but yet giving at the same time. The individual part of it is my ability to give it. So there's that, there's that thing that happens where, by giving, we receive, those kinds of paradoxes, So the more it is about me, the more it is about you. The more it is about what I'm bringing to myself, the more I'm bringing to my family. So I think that's the best way that I could express that.
In your case, is the individual path, i.e. working one-on-one with Bapu, a better path than working with a group, organization, or some large movement?
Well, I don't really have much experience with the large movements. I can only speak from my experience with Bapu and the level of awareness and openness that I've been able to experience. I don't like to use the word achieve because that brings it down to a more earthly level, but that I've been open to. There's no dogma here, Bapu doesn't lay dogma on you. Bapu doesn't lay anything on you, Bapu lets you experience Bapu. Bapu is so open, and he's such a spirit that if you're sensitive to that, if you can be sensitive to that, and graciously I am, then it's that openness that allows me to grow and to grow, but as a plant initially with roots, but then the roots get lifted and I can be blown away by the breeze, and that's So I think that's my experience. I don't have the experience with other organized groups, but I just know that my experience with Bapu has been one of total freedom, and because there's no dogma here. Bapu is not about dogma. Bapu is about spirit, about freedom, about life, and the power is so great, the reality of it is so strong that to be in that presence and to be sensitive to it, one cannot help but to become part of it.
You have a personal one-to-one relationship to Bapu that he describes as quite humorous. Would you comment on that?
Yes. Sometimes we're like a comedy team. Humor has always been a large part of my life. And I think just the fact that Bapu is so sensitive and can tune in to the individuals that he has, that visits him and that he speaks to, I think his recognition of that has caused us to have this relationship of humor that we express to each other that brings us to a point of it's very spatial, you know what I mean? It's very much I don't know what the right word is, but it's hysterically funny without physically necessarily having to become hysterical. And it's that sense of humor where I receive grace. I receive a lot of love from that humor. And I just feel that Bapu has a tremendous, I know for me, and I can't speak for other people, but Bapu for me has an ability to hone in on your essence, in this case my essence, and humor being such a large part of my life, I believe that that connection that we have is one that is as important to me as any of the other teachings that Tisziji imparts, to me.
Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Well, I would just like to offer my gratitude and my grace to Bapu, to Tisziji Muñoz, for giving me an opportunity to experience a dimension and a reality that I never knew existed, and also to all the people that I've met that are part of Bapu's family, has allowed me to just open up, like a flower, and experience a gentleness and a breeze and an odor, everything that you could possibly think of that I've never been able to experience before. And I don't mean that in the kind of flowery, that kind of thing, but in a true, heartfelt sense, the grace, I think grace is the word I'd have to use, the grace that I've experienced here, and that I've been able to see in myself too, because that's the beautiful thing about Bapu, is that it is about Bapu's grace, but Bapu understands that you have that grace too, and allows me to feel my grace. And that's the beautiful thing. I think that is indescribable. You can't put that into words. To be able to feel one's own grace with no ego. It's not an egoic thing. It's just a sense of beauty and well-being. I think that's about the best way I could put that.
Thank you very much, Salba.
Thank you, Hugh.
Hugh.